The MAOTIANSHAN shales, located in Yunnan province, are a series of early Cambrian sedimentary deposits renowned for their exceptional preservation of early multicellular life. These deposits, particularly the Chengjiang biota, date back approximately 518 million years and provide a crucial window into the Cambrian explosion, a period marked by the rapid diversification of life forms. Fossils from this formation include a wide array of early animal groups, some of which are ancestral to modern phyla, while others represent extinct lineages without direct descendants. The exceptional preservation of soft-bodied organisms in the MAOTIANSHAN shales has allowed scientists to study the morphology and anatomy of early animals in remarkable detail. This has led to significant insights into the early evolution of complex life on Earth. The Chengjiang fossil site is considered one of the most important Lagerstätten, offering unparalleled evidence of early animal diversity and the ecological dynamics of Cambrian marine environments. The Chengjiang biota comprises an extremely diverse faunal assembly, with some 185 species described in the literature as of June 2006. About 1 in 8 animals are problematic forms of uncertain affinity, some of which may have been evolutionary experiments that survived for only a brief period as benthic environments rapidly changed in the Cambrian. The Chengjiang biota is believed to have inhabited a delta front environment rich in oxygen, with high sedimentation rates and major fluctuations in salinity being the main environmental stressors. Despite their soft, gelatinous bodies, fossils thought to represent ctenophores appear in Lagerstätten dating as far back as the early Cambrian. The position of the ctenophores in the tree of life has long been debated in molecular phylogenetics studies. Biologists proposed that ctenophores constitute the second earliest branching animal lineage, with sponges being the sister group to all other multicellular animals. Their bodies consist of a mass of jelly, with a layer 2 cells thick on the outside, and another lining the internal cavity. The phylum has a wide range of body forms, including the egg-shaped cydipids with a pair of retractable tentacles that capture prey, the flat, generally combless platictinids, and the large-mouthed baroids, which prey on other ctenophores. Choia was suspended high above the seafloor, attached via stalk-like spines derived from spicules. Water is assumed to have entered the sponge parallel to the spines, being expelled, presumably, from a central opening. Sponges are multicellular organisms consisting of jelly-like mesohyl sandwiched between 2 thin layers of cells, and usually have tube-like bodies full of pores and channels that allow water to circulate through them. They have unspecialized cells that can transform into other types and that often migrate between the main cell layers and the mesohyl in the process. They do not have complex nervous, digestive, or circulatory systems. Xianguangia was polyp-like, its gastric cavity divided by septa. It had a second body cavity in its holdfast and densely plumed feather-like tentacles, implying that it was a suspension feeder. Early cnidarians were probably also benthic suspension feeders, unlike later mainly predatory cnidarians. The most notable characteristic shared by ecdysozoans is a 3-layered cuticle composed of organic material, which is periodically molted as the animal grows. This process of molting is called ecdysis, and gives the group its name. Acosmia was likely a burrowing animal that fed by deposit feeding. While originally suggested to be a priapulid, a 2020 study proposed to be a stem group ecdysozoan due to lacking the radial pharyngeal armature that characterizes modern ecdysozoans. Paleoscolicids bear an annulated trunk ornamented with circular patterns of phosphatic tessellating plates, a layered cuticle, and an armored proboscis. They are long and narrow, and can reach tens of centimeters in length. Their cuticle is annulated, typically in complete rings, but sometimes the rings split or only encircle part of the trunk. Each annulus is essentially identical to its neighbors. The only trunk differentiation is at the anterior and posterior. Molting is a crucial process in the growth of ecdysozoans and originated in the early Cambrian, mainly in arthropods and priapulid-like worms. However, evidence of molting in paleoscolicidomorphs is rare due to limited fossil preservation. A specimen of Crickocosmia shows pre-molting features, allowing researchers to reconstruct its molting process, similar to that of modern priapulid worms. This discovery provides the first direct evidence of molting in this molting, possibly serving to remove symbiotic organisms and replace worn-out sclerite. Selkirkia had a body divisible into a proboscis towards the anterior of a trunk enclosed by a tube. The proboscis would have been partially invertible and was armed with several spinules and spines, decreasing size distally overall. It was controlled by at least 2 sets of anterior retractor muscles. Immediately behind the proboscis was the trunk, smooth for the most part but lined with papillae towards the anterior. Priapulida, sometimes referred to as penis worms, is a phylum of unsegmented marine worms. The name of the phylum relates to the Greek god of fertility, because their general shape and their extensible spiny introvert proboscis may resemble the shape of a human penis. Zhenghecaris is a priapulid worm thought to belong to the crown group. Eximipriapulus is a carnivorous priapulid-like worm that has been found living in the discarded shells of hyolith. Lobopodians were some of the earliest known panarthropods, closely related to velvet worms, tardigrades, and the ancestors of all the true arthropod. They were small soft-bodied worm-like animals with multiple pairs of fleshy legs, and some species also bore elaborate spikes, armor plates, and fleshy bumps all over their bodies. But unlike its more charismatic relatives, Paucipodia inermis didn't seem to have any ornamentation at all. It lived in what was then a shallow tropical sea. Its 13 centimeters long tubular body had 9 pairs of legs, with each foot tipped with a pair of hooked claws, and the inside of its mouth was ringed with tiny sharp teeth. Several specimens have been found preserved in association with the weird gummy disc animal Eldonia, which may indicate Paucipodia either preyed on them or scavenged on their carcasses.
Known during its investigation by the nickname walking cactus, Diania belongs to a group known as the armored lobopodians and has a simple worm-like body with robust, spiny legs. Initially, the legs were thought to have a jointed exoskeleton, and Diania was suggested to be evolutionarily close to early arthropods, but many later studies have rejected this interpretation.
The maximum length of Onychodictyon is 7 centimeters. It has a resemblance to Microdictyon. Each leg has a pair of curved claws that are thought to have aided Onychodictyon in climbing onto other organisms. Its sclerites appear to have molted, with some specimens exhibiting perfectly conjoined plates from successive molts. Microdictyon is known from sclerite microfossils around the globe, while fossils from the Chengjiang are the only in the world to preserve the soft anatomy. The worm-like animal has 10 pairs of sclerites on the sides, matched to a pair of tentacle-like feet below. The head and posterior are tubular and featureless. Well known from the Canadian shales, the Hallucigenia species found in China appears to have less pronounced dorsal spines. Since the revisions around 90s, it is unquestionably a lobopodian panarthropod, although the relationship with other panarthropods remains controversial. Hallucigenia has long been interpreted as a stem group onychodictyon, a position that has found support from multiple phylogenetic analyses. A key character demonstrating this affinity is the cone-in-cone construction of Hallucigenia claws, a feature shared only with modern onychodictyons. Luolishania is a small, soft-bodied lobopodian about 7 mm long, with 16 pairs of stubby legs, the first 5 being longer and covered in spines arranged in a V-shape. It has a straight gut and anatomical features suggesting a filter-feeding lifestyle. Unlike other Luolishaniids, its relatively large head has a pair of small antennae and was the first lobopodian confirmed to have eyes, as verified by scanning electron microscopy. Facivermis was a worm-like creature up to 9 cm long. Its body was divided into 3 sections. An anterior part with 5 pairs of appendages bearing cetal rows, a long middle section, and a pear-shaped posterior with 3 rows of hooks around the anus. Facivermis was previously interpreted as a predator that anchored itself into sediment with its hooked posterior end and used its anterior appendages to catch prey. One fossil has a possible bradoriid preserved in its gut. However, the new specimens described in 2020 suggest a suspension-feeding lifestyle similar to feathered duster worms, with the posterior hooks used to anchor itself into their cylindrical tube. Jianshanopodia was suggested to be mainly crawled on the sea floor, but could swim with its fan-like tail when necessary. The leg branches might function as external gills. It is thought to be predatory and have sucked up prey with its short trunk, consuming food items with its robust mouthparts and gut diverticuli. Megadictyon is a large lobopodian, with a body length possibly up to 20 centimeters in total. The head has a pair of robust frontal appendages associated with rows of spines and terminal claws. Located on the underside of the head is a radiodont-like mouthpart formed by multiple layers of plates and tooth-like structures. The trunk is wide and annulated, with a pair of well-developed lobopodous limbs on each body segment. Only 8 segment pairs are countable in the incomplete fossil materials, which are lacking the posterior region, so it may have had more in nature. It also has pairs of digestive glands similar to those of basal arthropod. With an estimated body length of up to 1.5 meters, Omnidens is considered one of the largest known free-living organisms from the Cambrian period. Initially described in 1994, it was first interpreted as part of anomalocarid mouthparts, later as a giant priapulid, and is now considered a panarthropod closely related to the gilled lobopodians. Its unique mouth apparatus suggests a formidable predator, providing valuable insights into early animal evolution during the Cambrian explosion. The frontal appendages are known from their distalmost portions, which appear as wide, heavily sclerotized bases, bearing a bilaterally symmetrical series of long talons. Additionally, elements which may represent bilaterally symmetrical head carapaces and a number of small cetal blade-like structures have been found associated with the mouthparts and talons. Radiodonta were highly successful panarthropods, with many species from the Chengjiang fauna belonging to Amplectobelua, while herdiids are rare and some specimens remain unnamed or difficult to classify. Previously assigned to the Anomalocaris genus, Innovatiocaris is one of the most completely known radiodont. Some of its features seem to indicate an affinity with the herdiidae, though it is more similar to non-herdiids than to members of the herdiidae. Amplectobelua was likely nectonic predator. Its frontal appendages were worked like pincers to pinch prey. Its structure was suitable to firmly grasp and manipulate prey to the mouth or tearing off pieces from large carcasses. Gnathabase-like structures were probably used to chew prey. Research of 432 specimens resulted that it would be an extremely fast-growing animal for an arthropod. Lyrarapax neural tissue indicates that the radiodont frontal appendage is protocerebral, resolving parts of the arthropod head problem and showing that the frontal appendage is homologous to the antennae of onychophorans. It is a small animal, with specimens measuring up to 8 and 4 centimeters in body length. Ramskoeldia is known from fragmented remains, including frontal appendages, gnathabase-like structures, oral cone plates, body flaps, and parts of the head carapace. Its frontal appendage consists of 16 podomeres, with podomeres 4 to 12 bearing prominent auxiliary spines. The endite of podomere 4 is the largest but not as extremely enlarged as in Amplectobelua. Anomalocaridity differs from Amplectobeluidae by having a triradial oral cone and a non-hypertrophied first distal endite, while both families share features like alternating endite lengths, streamlined bodies, small heads with ovoid sclerites, well-developed swimming flaps, caudal furcae, and a predatory lifestyle, forming a clade in multiple phylogenetic analyses. Like other radiodonts, Anomalocaris had swimming flaps running along its body, large compound eyes, and a single pair of segmented, frontal appendages, which in Anomalocaris were used to grasp prey. Estimated to reach 45 centimeters long excluding the frontal appendages and tail fan, Anomalocaris is one of the largest animals of the Cambrian, and thought to be one of the earliest examples of an apex predator. The interpretation of Anomalocaris as an active predator is widely accepted throughout the history of research, as its raptorial frontal appendages and mid-gut glands strongly suggest a predatory lifestyle. The lack of wear on radiodont mouthparts suggests they did not come into regular contact with mineralized trilobite shells, and were possibly better suited to feeding on smaller, soft-bodied organisms by suction, since they would have experienced structural failure if they were used against the armor of trilobites. Cambroraster is a Middle Cambrian herdiid radiodont, known from hundreds of specimens found in the Burgess Shale and formally described in 2019. It grew up to 30 centimeters long and featured a large horseshoe-shaped dorsal carapace, using its oral cone and hooked frontal appendages to sift through sediment for food. Nicknamed the spaceship fossil due to its resemblance to the Millennium Falcon, its species name Falcatus reflects this similarity. Zhenghecaris was a large-sized arthropod carapace, originally described as bivalved arthropod close to Thylacocephala, later reinterpreted as herdiid radiodont close to Cambroraster. Its classification is still discussed. Some fossils, apparently the lateral cellrites of a radiodont, connected anteriorly by a beak and featuring two-pronged, wing-like processes posteriorly, have also been attributed to Zhenghecaris. The Cambrian explosion is the golden age of experimentation among arthropods, as these animals experienced an incredible diversity that, once fossilized, appears completely random. For this reason, it is difficult to rigorously classify all the discoveries made from this geological period, and many of the created branches remained very short-lived, with unique representatives found only in the Cambrian. Cucumaris is an enigmatic arthropod that has been tentatively classified as a possible radiodont, although a position closely related to Erratus as the most primitive deuteropod is more likely. Onychodictyon is a giant arthropod once misidentified as a patoid radiodont. Kylinxia is a small, shrimp-like arthropod from the Cambrian period, measuring about 5 centimeters long, with a body divided into 3 regions: head, trunk, and pygidium. Its head is covered by a fused carapace and initially thought to have 5 eyes, though recent studies suggest it had only 3. The head also features a pair of unfused, 16-jointed frontal appendages with serrated spines, similar to those of Anomalocaris, but facing upward like the appendages of Megachirons. Known specimens of Erratus measure between 3 and 7 centimeters in length. The arthropod had a bivalved carapace that covered the top, which possesses an anterior spine but rounded posteriorly. A pair of lateral eyes located near the anterior spine of the carapace. The eyes appear to have no lenses, and the stalks appear to be as long as the eyes. Chuandianella is a small arthropod, reaching up to 3 centimeters in body length, with a bivalved carapace made of calcium phosphate, measuring up to 14 millimeters long. Its body consists of at least 18 segments, with the first 2 pairs of appendages being antenniform and uniramous, followed by 10 similar biramus appendages with blade-like, feather-like endite. The trunk ends with a pair of elongate caudal flukes. Species of Isoxys are thought to have been actively swimming predators, using its frontal appendages to capture soft-bodied prey, with the frontalmost pairs of biramus limbs aiding in food processing. The various Isoxys species are thought to have occupied a variety of niches, from swimming just above the seafloor to open ocean swimmers. Swimming was likely accomplished by rhythmic movement of the legs. Zhenghecaris is a hymenocarian with no known head fossils. Although the purpose for Cynophilos is unknown, it may have served a reproductive, migratory, or defensive purpose. Onychodictyon possibly had eyes directly on top of its carapace. The total length of the Onychodictyon body ranges from 8 to 11 millimeters. The bivalved carapace covered about a third of the total body length, and has up to 6 serrations on its forward edge. The head has a pair of large uniramous antennae, as well as a smaller pair of secondary antennae, as well as pair of mandibles and maxillae. Clipocaris species in the genus are primarily distinguished by the presence of a serrated edge on the front of the carapace of Clipocaris serrata. It is noted for the modification of an anterior pair of limbs into spined grasping appendages, indicating a predatory lifestyle. Species of Pectocaris are thought to have been active swimmers. They have been suggested to be filter feeders, using the setae on the endites of their limbs to filter out matter from the water column. It possessed a fused bivalved carapace, covering about half of the total body length, out of which were a pair of pedunculate eyes, both antennae and part of the head. A hymenocarian arthropod, the carapace of the Zhenghecaris was around 30 to 40 millimeters in length, with a pronounced ridge at the top of the carapace separating the 2 valves, which formed a fin-like structure raised above the carapace. The head had a pair of stalked eyes, as well as a dumbbell-shaped medial eye between them. The head also bore a pair of mandibles as well as at least 1 and possibly 2 pairs of antennules. Also known in the Burgess Shale by Branchiocharis preciosa, Branchiocharis yunnanensis is only known from isolated carapaces, although it is thought that this may be because in this species the carapace covered the entire body. It also has 2 morphotypes. Canadaspis was likely a benthic animal that lived walking along the seafloor. It had claws on the end of its appendages which may have been used to stir up sediment or to scrape off the top layer, which Derek Briggs suggested may have been a nutritious layer of microbes. Large particles it stirred up would have been captured by spines on the inside of its legs. These spines would have directed the food particles to the organism's mouth, where it used its mandibles to grind larger particles. Tuzoids seem to have been active swimmers that probably cruised around just above the seafloor, with their stout legs suggesting they could also walk around if they flexed their valves open. The arrangement of their spiny front limbs wasn't suited to grabbing at fast-swimming prey, but instead may have been used to capture slower seafloor animals or to scavenge from carcasses. Fuxianhuides possess specialized post-antennal appendages with serrated edges used for food processing. The presence of gnathobases in members of Chengjiang suggests that they were capable of durophagy. In most Fuxianhuides, the thorax tergites narrow posteriorly, terminating in either a swimming paddle or paired flukes with a tail spine. In members of Fuxianhuidae, the thorax is divided into two sections, the anterior wide opisthorax and the posterior narrow limbless tail-like abdomen. In 2012, a Fuxianhuia fossil was described with exceptional preservation of brain and optic lobes. The shape and complexity correspond roughly to that of a modern Malacostracan brain. In general, the Fuxianhuia brain shows the same tripartite morphology of Malacostraca and Insecta, indicating that such an organization could be precedent to the divergence between these clade. Cunmangella had 12 appendages, including a pair of antennae as well pairs of biramus limbs, including 4 anterior pairs of appendages bearing double rows of endites on their endopods, and a posterior 5 with only a single row of endites, as well as 2 terminal pairs of uniramous limbs. Eggs have been found preserved attached to the posteriormost 3 pairs of biramus limbs, suggesting it engaged in brood care. Zhenghecaris may have been a predator, with its great appendages and exopods suggested to be used for hunting and swimming respectively. The head possess a pair of unstalked eyes, a pair well-developed great appendage, as well as 3 more appendage pairs of unknown detail. Each of the great appendage consists of a 2-segmented peduncle and a 3-segmented claw. Allocomenius likely swam by undulating its outer flap-like limbs, similar to Anomalocaris. Its inner limb branches were not well suited for walking but may have helped it move along the sea floor. These limbs were possibly used for clinging to objects or tearing apart prey, suggesting a scavenging or predatory lifestyle. Its large eyes, long flagella, and spiny inner limbs support the idea that it hunted organisms living on or in the sea floor. Xianguangia was about 5 centimeters long and had long, whip-like flagellae extending from its great appendages. Its internal organs are occasionally preserved within the substrate in 3 dimensions. Their 2 pairs of eyes are protected and covered by their exterior head shields, with 2 eyes being located on each side. Megacyra is an extinct class of predatory arthropods defined by their possession of spined great appendages. Their taxonomic position is controversial, with studies either considering them stem group euarthropods or stem group chelicerates. The homology of the great appendages to the cephalic appendages of other arthropods is also controversial. Fortiforceps was a small Cambrian megacyran arthropod from the Chengjiang biota, measuring up to 4 centimeters in length. Its head featured large stalked eyes, frontal projections, great appendages, and 2 additional cephalic appendages. The trunk had 20 to 22 segments, each bearing blade-like spines and biramus limbs with paddle-shaped exopods. It ended in a forked tailpiece with rod-like structures on the outer edges and a rectangular central section. Primicaris range from 2 to 6 mm in length, and 1.5 and 4 mm in maximum width. The undivided subovate-shaped dorsal shield covered the entire body and wrapped around the front edge of the carapace, forming a doublure structure. The midline of the carapace exhibited thickening. There is a pair of slender uniramous segmented antennae, as well as 10 pairs of biramus limbs. The Artiopoda is a grouping of extinct arthropods that includes trilobites and their close relative. It was erected by Ho in 1997 to encompass a wide diversity of arthropods that would traditionally have been assigned to the Trilobitomorpha. Trilobites, in part due to abundance of findings owing to their mineralized exoskeletons, are by far the best recorded, diverse and long-lived members of the clade. Other members, which lack mineralized exoskeletons, are known mostly from Cambrian deposit. Acanthameridian was a 35 mm long animal, with 11 segments ending in rear-facing spines. The head features free cheeks separated from the rest of the head by sutures. This is analogous with trilobite. Otherwise, affinities are mainly unclear. More recently discovered specimens of the species Acanthameridian anacanthus have paired gut diverticula as have been seen in artiopods. Urocodia was a small, elongated Cambrian arthropod, reaching up to 3.5 centimeters in length. Its body consisted of a cephalon and a pygidium of similar size, both featuring 4 pairs of large lateral spikes, though the pygidium had a triangular shape with additional tiny posterior spikes. Between these regions, an elongated thorax contained 14 or 15 segments. It had stalked eyes, stubby antennae, and subequal ventral appendages with annulated bases and lamellar outer branches. Retifices was a relatively large Cambrian arthropod, reaching up to 55 centimeters in total length, including its extended antennae and tail spine. It had a broad, short head shield without eyes, and its segmented antennae featured spines at the joint. The head bore 4 pairs of appendages, with the first 3 being uniramous and clawed, while the 4th was biramus, resembling the biramus limbs of its 10-segmented trunk. Each trunk limb had a leg-like endopod with terminal claws, a paddle-shaped exopod with over 12 lamellae, and additional exits from the basal segment. Cydnea is thought to have been seafloor-dwelling generalist durophagus predator and or scavenger that used its gnathobases to crush and shred prey items, including hard-shelled organisms like juvenile trilobites and brachiopods, but possibly also softer animals like worms or soft-bodied arthropods like Bradoriid. Sediments present in the gut of Nereoia suggest that it may have been a deposit feeder, eating large amounts of soil, like an earthworm. All nerecoids were probably marine bottom dwellers. Mishuia probably lived as a predator or scavenger. This can be deduced from the robust and spiny basal segments of the legs, which resemble the gnathobases of trilobites. These were likely used for chewing. Such carnivorous behavior is confirmed by the relatively small digestive system that indicates high nutrition value food. By the time trilobites first appeared in the fossil record, they were already highly diversified and geographically dispersed. Because trilobites had wide diversity and an easily fossilized mineralized exoskeleton, they left an extensive fossil record. The study of their fossils has facilitated important contributions to biostratigraphy, paleontology, evolutionary biology, and plate tectonic. Onychodictyon was an early trilobite with a flat body, thin calcification, and sickle-shaped eye ridges, featuring a spindle-shaped cephalon, epistoperian sutures, and a small pygidium. Its thorax had 15 segments, with the ninth segment carrying a long spine, and its genal spines extended backward at an angle. Notably, its biramus appendages included whip-like antennae, 21 pairs of legs with forked claws for grip, and exopods with thin filaments likely functioning as gills. The gut was a straight tube with 9 pairs of diverticuli, suggesting an active scavenger or predatory lifestyle. Inquicus attached itself by a disc at the tip of its tail, didn't seem to penetrate the worm's skin, and its mouth faced away to feed from the water around them, so it probably wasn't harming its host. For a long time, a Misquia classification was a paleontological mystery, but some new specimens with better preservation seem to have finally revealed its identity. It was a gnathiferan. Reaching about 2.5 centimeters long, it had a flattened body with 2 side fins and a paddle-like tail fin, a rounded head tipped with 2 tentacles, and complex mouth apparatus with jawworm-like teeth. It was probably an active swimmer that spent most of its time high in the water column well above the seabed. Little is known of arrowworms' behavior and physiology, due to the complexity in culturing them and reconstructing their natural habitat. It is known that they feed more frequently with higher temperatures. Planktonic ketognaths often must swim continuously, with a hop-and-sink behavior, to keep themselves in the desired location in the water layer, and swim actively to catch prey. Internally, Iotioba is characterized by a through gut flanked by a pair of boudinage tubes interpreted as nephridia. Orthroxanthus was covered in both long spines and extensive armor, with tile-like scales on its back, overlapping dagger-shaped plates around its sides, and a small shell on its head. Although it would have been a member of the Lophotrochozoa, its exact evolutionary relationships are still uncertain. It might have been a transitional form between Wiwaxia and the Hawkyriids. Wiwaxia had a domed body covered in chitinous plates and spines with a ribbed texture. It could reach around 5 centimeters long, with the longest spines about the same length, and individual sclerites were shed and replaced as it grew. It seems to have also been a mat grazer, with its armor serving to protect it against predators like Anomalocaris. Some specimens have small Nasugia brachiopods attached to their plates or spines in what seems to be a commensal relationship. The brachiopods gained a mobile home that allowed them to filter feed higher up in the water column while also being protected from predators. Hyolithids were benthic, using their helens as stilts to hold the opening of their shells above the sea floor. Some are preserved in vertical orientation, suggesting a sessile suspension feeding habit. They tend to be flat on the bottom. Cotyledon is a stalked filter feeder that reached a couple of centimeters in height. Brachiopods are marine animals with hard upper and lower shells, differing from bivalve mollusks that have left and right shells. They are divided into articulate and inarticulate groups, distinguished by the presence or absence of toothed hinges and muscle arrangements. Many brachiopods use a stalk-like pedicle to anchor themselves to the seabed while avoiding sediment obstruction. Their lifespans range from 3 to over 30 years, and their reproductive strategies vary, with inarticulate larvae resembling miniature adults and articulate larvae undergoing metamorphosis from planktonic forms. Yunnanozoan was a fusiform, laterally compressed organism, measuring between 2 and 6 centimeters in length. It had a segmented dorsal unit, with a triangular first segment followed by rectangular ones, and axial stripes running beneath it. The front featured 7 pairs of filamentous arches covered by sac-like structures, while a tube-like structure, possibly a gut, was present towards the back, along with 4 pairs of circular structures that may have been gonads. It is suggested to have used its filamentous arches to feed, with the openings on the side of the body being used to expel water. Zhenghecaris was a small, 2.5 centimeters long craniate that lived during the Cambrian explosion and is considered one of the earliest fishes. It had a defined skull, gill arches, cranial cartilages, and a probable notochord, making it a basal stem craniate. More than 500 specimens have been discovered in the Chengjiang Lagerstätten, with well-preserved soft-bodied fossils. Zhenghecaris was distinct from Cambrian, with differences in gill arrangement, branchial rays, and myomere shape. It had a dorsal, ventral, and caudal fin, as well as fin radials similar to those of modern hagfish and lampreys. Cambrian had a distinct head and trunk, featuring a forward sail-like dorsal fin and a probable paired ventral fin fold. It had 5 or 6 gill pouches, a notochord, a pharynx, and a digestive tract extending to the rear tip. The only known specimen has 25 myomeres, no fin radials, and its tail tip buried in sediment. Vetulicolians had a 2-part body plan. A large anterior forebody with a mouth and 5 oval openings on each side, possibly gills, and a segmented posterior tail-like section. They lacked appendages such as legs, feelers, or eyes, and had a constricted joint between the 2 body sections. Some fossils suggest the presence of a notochord-like structure. Their streamlined, tadpole-like bodies indicate they were active swimmers. Vetulicolians lacked features for grasping or chewing, making predation unlikely. Their gill slits suggest a planktivorous diet, though some fossils contain sediment, leading to theories of deposit feeding. The spiral shape of their hindgut challenges typical deposit feeding interpretations. Some researchers propose they were selective deposit feeders that also engaged in filter feeding. Cambrorasternids encompass 3 particular types of enigmatic animals first appearing in the Cambrian: Herpetogaster, Phlogites, and the Eldonioidea. They are united by a set of common features including at least 1 pair of bifurcated oral tentacles and a large stomach. Rotodiscus was originally thought to have been pelagic, but is now thought to be benthic. And here are the first representatives of echinoderms, distant ancestors of starfish and sea urchins. In the context of fossil discoveries in the MAOTIANSHAN shales, enigmatic refers to creatures that are difficult or impossible to classify due to their unique and puzzling characteristic. These animals don't fit into known evolutionary branches and exhibit traits that make them stand apart from any living or extinct group. As a result, they represent evolutionary dead ends, with no descendants or clear place in the tree of life. Deinonymiscus isolatus was a small, stalked organism resembling a flower, with a cup-shaped body at the top of a long, thin stalk. The organism likely filtered seawater for food using its mouth and anus positioned next to each other, with the 18 petals possibly helping to direct food towards the mouth. Its unique anatomy, with a U-shaped gut and solid plate-like petals, made it difficult to classify, with no clear relatives found in other genera. Though some suggested affinities with modern entoprocs or even echinoderms, Deinonymiscus remains unclassifiable, with no compelling modern comparisons.